up, up, down, down, left, right, BA, start.
Oh, the Konami code.
Exactly, the Konami code.
Yeah.
I mean, if you grew up playing, classic video games, you probably have that sequence just permanently burned into your muscle memory.
Yeah, you don't even think about it. Your thumbs just do it.
Right. You punch that into your controller, and suddenly, boom, you have 30 extra lives. You've completely bypassed the normal rules of the game.
You found the developer's back door.
You found the back door.
Mm.
And well, welcome to this deep dive, because today we were exploring a topic that millions of people approach with that exact same cheat code mentality.
It's so true. They really do.
Our mission today is to examine a wildly popular, highly searched question, which is how to pass a drug test. But, and this is key, we are doing it through the lens of a document called the iMedix Guide to Toxicology and Drug Screening Logic.
Right.
Now, to be crystal clear right out of the gate here for everyone listening, our goal is not to give you like a step-by-step how-to guide for beating a test.
No, definitely not.
We are using this iMedix source material to understand the medical reasoning behind the issue. We want to explore, real-world patient misunderstandings, the actual hard science of toxicology, and really highlight the critical role of independent medical information platforms.
Because it's a huge issue.
It is. Because frankly, looking for a way to pass a drug test online is exactly like looking for a cheat code, only to realize that the game is actually your own biology.
Yeah.
And the underlying code is the rigid, unbreakable science of toxicology.
When you frame it around that cheat code mentality, it really it exposes the core misunderstanding people have about their own bodies.
How so?
Well, because when you treat your biology like a video game, the automatic assumption is that there must be like a hidden sequence of inputs.
Right, like if I just drink this specific herbal tea.
Exactly. Drink this tea, or take this exact sequence of vitamins, or sweat in a sauna for exactly 45 minutes. And they think that will somehow rewrite the system's rules and give you a favorable outcome. But to understand why that approach fundamentally fails, we first have to look at the environment where this cheat code information is being generated in the first place.
The internet.
The internet. And that brings us to why our source today, the iMedix Guide, is so foundational. So iMedix functions as an independent medical information platform.
Go.
They maintain a comprehensive drug database and a vast library of educational resources. Their primary focus is exploring medication safety, addressing treatment questions, and just providing overall patient education.
So they're coming at this from a completely clinical angle.
Purely clinical. They exist for a very specific reason. When people start searching for things like how to pass a drug test, they are stepping into an absolute minefield.
Oh, a total minefield.
Yeah, of misinformation, commerce, and frankly, panic.
Panic is the big one there. But the phrase independent medical information, that feels like it's carrying a lot of weight here.
It's the most important part.
Because if we look at the reality of the modern internet, true independence is incredibly rare. And think about it. When someone panics and types that question into a search bar, they aren't being handed an objective medical journal.
No, not at all.
They're being hit with like a barrage of targeted advertisements. Buy this detox drink, miraculous results.
Right. Overnight shipping guaranteed.
Exactly. They tumble into these anonymous forums where someone swears that, drinking a gallon of pickle juice and doing jumping jacks literally saved their career.
The pickle juice method. I've seen that one.
Right. It's a landscape totally dominated by anecdotal survival stories and legally dubious workarounds. So an independent platform like iMedix isn't trying to sell you a masking agent.
Right.
And they certainly aren't trying to enforce some company's human resources policy either. They just provide an anchor of objective medical truth. They focus purely on the biological facts of how substances interact with the human body.
Yeah, and the word independent is really the only thing separating clinical reality from a sales pitch in this specific arena.
That's a good way to put it.
Think about the psychological state of the person making that search. They're usually under immense stress.
Like 2 a.m. sweating over their keyboard kind of stress.
Exactly. They might be facing the loss of a job, a major legal issue, or a complication with a medical prescription. In that state of panic, the brain is actively hunting for a quick fix.
It just wants an out.
Right. And internet algorithms are perfectly designed to feed that panic. They prioritize engagement and commerce over clinical accuracy every single time.
Because Outrage and quick fixes get clicks.
Exactly. So if a specific, detox method gets heavily upvoted on a forum, human nature kicks in.
Yeah.
We see 5 different people agreeing on the same bizarre method, and we assume, well, it must be true.
Social proof.
Social proof. It creates this incredibly powerful illusion of consensus. But in medicine, and specifically in the field of toxicology, consensus without scientific validity is just a shared delusion.
Just a shared delusion. I love that. But I do want to push back on that a little bit, though.
Okay, go for it.
Because we live in an era where literally all of human knowledge is in our pockets.
Sure.
We have unprecedented access to medical journals, chemical breakdowns, and real scientific data right alongside those forums.
We do.
So with so much information instantly available to you, why does a formalized independent database like iMedix even matter? I mean, are we actually more informed today because we have access to all of this, or has the sheer volume of data just made us more, confidently confused?
Confidently confused is exactly what it is.
Right. If the truth is out there somewhere in the search results, shouldn't people be able to find it without needing a dedicated platform to hold their hand?
You'd think so, but it's the sheer volume that creates the confidence, and it's the lack of context that creates the confusion.
Context is key.
It is. You can find the chemical structure of a drug metabolite online, sure, but right next to it in your search results is a highly produced video of an influencer claiming they flushed that exact metabolite out of their system with cranberry juice in 3 hours.
Wow, yeah.
And for a layperson without a background in pharmacokinetics, both pieces of information look equally authoritative. They both have high production value or lots of likes.
Right, the algorithm treats them as equal.
Exactly. The formal database matters because it strips away all that noise. It removes the financial biases and the anecdotal noise. It acts as a translator for the actual physiological science.
Which is exactly the kind of confident confusion that leads people into dangerous territory in the first place.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's why they eventually have to seek out specific authoritative guides when the internet hacks inevitably fail them.
Yeah, when the pickle juice doesn't work.
When the pickle juice fails.
Yeah.
And that transition from panic searching to actually trying to understand the science, that brings us directly to the primary source document for today's dies. The iMedix Guide to Toxicology and Drug Screening Logic.
It's a great title.
Let's start taking this apart. What are we actually looking at when we break down that title?
Well, we really need to start with the foundational terminology. So, toxicology. In the popular imagination, toxicology sounds like something out of a true crime documentary.
Like finding arsenic in the tea.
Exactly. The study of deadly poisons or lethal overdoses. And while that's historically accurate, in modern medicine, toxicology is much broader than that.
Okay.
It is the comprehensive study of how the body interacts with exogenous substances.
Meaning things coming from outside the body.
Right.
Okay.
Any chemical introduced from the outside. It's the science of how your body absorbs a substance, how it distributes it through your bloodstream, how your liver and enzymes metabolize it, and finally, how it is eliminated.
The full life cycle of the drug in your body.
That is the baseline. But the second part of that title is where the guide really challenges the public perception. Drug screening logic.
Logic. That word immediately stands out to me.
Why is that?
Because it feels so rigid.
Right.
I mean, we usually associate medicine with healing or care or, subjective symptoms. Doc, my back hurts. Applying the word logic to a biological screen fundamentally changes the tone.
It really does. And the guide heavily emphasizes this phrase precisely because it shatters the biggest myth surrounding the entire industry.
Which is?
That drug screening is magic, or that it's an arbitrary hurdle. And most importantly, it shatters the myth that it is a subjective judgment.
Right.
There is no doctor or lab technician looking at your sample and deciding based on your personality or your excuses whether you pass or fail.
He seems like a good guy. Let's let this one slide. That doesn't happen.
That absolutely does not happen. It is a system built entirely on strict biological and chemical logic. If we extrapolate on what logic means in a clinical and scientific setting, it implies absolute predictability.
Okay, predictability.
It implies the existence of scientific parameters, highly specific cutoff levels, and measurable, quantifiable data.
Right.
It means that the human body processes chemical substances according to established, unbreakable biological rules, not according to exceptions, and definitely not according to wishful thinking.
So if we compare this screening logic to a mathematical equation, or even the source code of that video game we talked about, the entire perspective shifts.
Completely.
In math, 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah.
The equation doesn't care if you really, really need the answer to be 5 to keep your job.
Right.
It doesn't care about your intent. It doesn't care about your moral character. And it certainly doesn't care that you drank 3 gallons of water beforehand to try and change the variables.
No, the math is the math.
The test is completely blind to everything, except the biological variables that are physically present in the system at the exact moment of the screen. It's just an algorithm processing inputs.
And taking that math equation into the laboratory, the screening equipment, whether it's, a basic initial cup test or a highly advanced mass spectrometry machine, it's just running that algorithm.
Yeah.
It is identifying the molecular weight and the chemical fingerprint of what is directly in front of it.
So to really grasp this logic, we need to understand the inputs.
Exactly. The guide pushes us to understand the different inputs, which are the various testing methods themselves, because different tests are looking for completely different parts of the equation.
And this is where the medically accurate reality diverges completely from the internet rumors.
Completely.
Let's break those testing methods down at a high level, because the general public often talks about the drug test as if it's one giant monolithic thing.
I have a drug test tomorrow.
Exactly. But it's actually a suite of very different scientific tools, and each one has its own detection window and its own biological mechanism.
Let's start with the most ubiquitous one, urine testing.
The classic cup.
The classic cup. The fundamental misconception here is that a urine test is looking for the drug you actually consumed.
Wait, it's not?
No, in reality, it is rarely looking for the parent drug.
Okay, then what is it looking for?
It is looking for metabolites.
Metabolite.
Yeah. When you ingest a substance, your body recognizes it as foreign. Your liver immediately goes to work using enzymes to break that chemical down into different water-soluble compounds.
So we can get rid of it.
Exactly. So your kidneys can filter them out and excrete them. The urine test is designed to detect those specific, unique metabolic byproducts. It's basically looking for the exhaust fumes left behind after the engine has processed the fuel.
Okay, I love that analogy. So if we stay with the timeline idea, urine testing is basically looking in the biological rearview mirror.
That's a perfect way to put it.
It's a record of what your body has already processed and is currently trying to throw away.
Precisely. And that's why the detection window for urine can stretch from a few days to several weeks, depending on the substance.
Because the body takes time to take out the trash, basically.
Exactly. Now compare that to saliva or oral fluid testing. Saliva operates on a completely different set of logical rules.
How so?
Unlike urine, a saliva test is generally looking for the parent drug itself.
The original substance.
Right, the actual substance as it exists before the liver has had a chance to fully metabolize it.
Oh, why?
Because it's measuring what is currently active in the oral cavity, the detection window is incredibly short. It's usually measuring use within the last few hours to maybe a couple of days at most.
It's essentially a real-time snapshot of the present moment, rather than the rearview mirror of the urine test.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and what about blood testing? Because that always sounds like the most intensive, definitive version of a screen.
Blood testing is certainly the most invasive, but it shares some logical similarities with saliva testing.
Because it's also a snapshot.
Exactly. Blood tests are generally looking for the parent drug, measuring the actual active concentration circulating in your bloodstream at that exact second.
So it's very immediate.
It is the medical gold standard for determining active impairment. For instance, if law enforcement needs to know if someone is currently intoxicated at the scene of an accident,
Right.
or if a doctor needs to know what is actively suppressing a patient's nervous system in an emergency room.
They need to know what's happening right now.
Right now. But because drugs are constantly being metabolized, moved from the blood into tissues, or filtered by the kidneys, the detection window in blood is actually surprisingly short for many substances.
Because the body is just constantly trying to clear the bloodstream.
Exactly. The blood is like a highway. Things are just passing through.
Okay, then we arrive at the one that seems to terrify the internet forums the most.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Hair follicle testing.
Yeah.
If urine is the rearview mirror and blood is the real-time snapshot, hair testing feels like the ultimate violation of the cheat code because it's a completely different chronological beast altogether.
It really is. Hair testing is essentially a biological ledger.
A ledger.
Okay, yeah. When a drug is active in your bloodstream, microscopic amounts of the parent drug and its metabolites get carried to the hair papilla.
The root of the hair.
Right. And they are deposited directly into the hair follicle. As the hair grows out of the scalp, those chemical markers are permanently trapped inside the hair shaft, bound to the melanin.
Wow.
Because human hair grows at a relatively predictable rate, about half an inch per month, a standard sample can reveal a chronological timeline of substance use going back months.
It's like tree rings.
Exactly like tree rings. You can't just pause the growth of your hair, and you can't easily wash those markers out without chemically destroying the hair entirely. The logic here is historical and cumulative.
So, synthesizing all of this, we have urine looking at the metabolic exhaust, saliva and blood looking at the immediate active substances, and hair acting as a long-term historical ledger.
You've got it.
The varying detection windows aren't just arbitrary rules made up by testing companies to be annoying.
No.
They are direct reflections of how human physiology processes chemicals over time. The logic is airtight.
It is airtight, but, and this is the crux of the issue, because the general public does not understand this multifaceted, rigid scientific logic, they try to find ways around it.
Right.
They try to apply social, behavioral, or superficial solutions to a purely chemical equation.
And that profound disconnect brings us to the central question of this entire deep dive, and really the most prevalent topic surrounding the entire industry of drug screening.
Which brings us back to the exact phrasing of the search query itself, how to pass a drug test.
Yes.
The phrasing of that query is incredibly revealing from a psychological standpoint. Asking how to pass automatically implies that a medical or toxicological screen is an academic exam.
Like a pop quiz.
Right. It implies that it's a performance metric you can study for, trick, or cram for at the last minute to get a passing grade.
It shifts the entire paradigm. You're no longer looking at it as a clinical, objective measurement of what is currently present in a patient's biological system.
Yeah.
You have turned it into a game of compliance and evasion. You are treating the testing apparatus or the lab technician like a strict teacher you're trying to hide a cheat sheet from.
And that psychological shift is deeply dangerous from a medical perspective.
Because it ignores reality.
Completely. The medical reasoning behind toxicology is completely, unequivocally divorced from the concept of passing or failing in a moral, social, or academic sense.
The machine doesn't care if you're a good person.
To a clinical toxicologist or to the machine running the analysis, there is no pass or fail. There is only detected or not detected based on those specific calibrated cutoff levels we talked about.
Right.
The test is strictly about establishing biological facts. Now, sure, those facts might be utilized by an employer for workplace safety or by a sports organization for regulatory compliance.
Which is where the anxiety comes from.
Of course, but critically, in a healthcare setting, those facts are used for medical treatment purposes.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, so when an anesthesiologist orders a toxicology screen before a major surgery, they aren't grading your character.
Right.
They are trying to ensure that the powerful sedatives they are about to administer won't cause a fatal chemical interaction with a substance that is already occupying your neuroreceptors.
I have to ask a genuinely skeptical question here, though.
Go ahead.
We are talking about this from the perspective of clinical logic.
Yeah.
The hospital, the anesthesiologist. But if a person is facing absolute ruin, if they are going to lose their livelihood, their ability to feed their family, or face legal consequences because of a positive screen for a job, of course they're going to treat it like a test they need to cheat.
I get that, absolutely.
Right. Like, are they really going to stop and read a clinical guide on pharmacokinetics? Isn't human nature always going to gravitate toward the quick fix, the evasion? Because the stakes are tied to their survival, not their health literacy.
That is the exact friction point where the danger lies. You are absolutely right that human nature in a panic state prioritizes survival and evasion.
It's fight or flight.
It is. But the tragedy of the cheat code mindset is that the very methods people use to evade the test often fail because they ignore the biological reality.
Huh.
And in doing so, they put their actual physical survival at risk.
How so?
Well, when your only goal is evasion, you become willfully, sometimes aggressively, ignorant of pharmacology. You become so hyper-focused on the outcome of the test keeping the job, staying out of trouble, that you completely ignore the active toxicology happening inside your own organs.
You're creating the symptom, the test, and ignoring the disease, the lack of knowledge.
Exactly. This disconnect is a textbook example of a much broader problem in healthcare. The systemic lack of fundamental health literacy. And it brings us directly to the root of patient misunderstandings and severe medication risks.
Which is exactly what the iMedix source material emphasizes as its core mission.
Yes.
The platform matters because people routinely misunderstand medication risks. They think the risk is the test itself, not the chemical in their body.
Which is backward.
Completely backward. iMedix steps in to clarify these common misconceptions and explain the practical, real-world safety implications. So let's bridge that gap for the listener. How does the desperation of the how to pass mentality connect to broader, tangible patient safety issues?
It connects through the fundamental mechanics of metabolism, specifically how different substances interact with the body's tissues.
Okay, let's get into the mechanics.
When patients don't understand how drugs are metabolized, how long they actually stay active in the system, or how they compound with other substances, they resort to methods that are not just illogical, but wildly unsafe.
Because they're guessing.
They're flying blind. Let's look at the actual physiological factors that determine how long a substance remains detectable. Timing, your individual metabolic rate, the frequency of your use, and crucially, the specific chemical properties of the substance involved.
Because not all substances play by the same biological rules. The body treats different chemicals in fundamentally different ways, right?
Exactly. The most critical distinction people fail to understand is the concept of lipid solubility versus water solubility.
This sounds like chemistry class, but break it down for us.
It's simpler than it sounds. Some drugs and medications are water soluble. The body is very efficient at metabolizing these and flushing them out relatively quickly through urine, sweat, and breath.
So they go through the system fast.
Right. But other substances, famously the cannabinoids found in marijuana, but also certain prescription medications like diazepam, are highly lipid soluble.
Meaning fat soluble.
They are fat soluble. They actively bind to the fat cells in your body.
Oh, wow.
When you use these substances frequently, they don't just pass through, they accumulate in those fat stores.
Like storing away energy for winter, but it's drug metabolites.
Exactly. And as your body naturally burns fat over the course of days and weeks to create energy, those trapped metabolites are slowly, continuously released back into the bloodstream and eventually filtered into the urine.
So if I'm picturing this right, picture the fat cells like a biological sponge.
That's a perfect image.
Someone who is a frequent user might stop using completely, thinking they are preparing for a test, but because their sponge is completely saturated, their body is basically drip-feeding metabolites into their own system for weeks on end.
That sponge analogy is exactly what happens. Their frequency of use created a massive compounding effect.
But they don't know that.
No, because the average person searching online doesn't understand the difference between water and lipid solubility. They apply flawed logic.
I think, well, I haven't used in 4 days, and I drank a lot of water, so I must be clean.
Right. Then they take the test, they test positive, and they are completely bewildered. They feel like the test is rigged or the lab made a mistake.
When really it's just the sponge squeezing out slowly.
Yes. And that specific misunderstanding, the failure to grasp lipid solubility, is the primary fuel for the massive, unregulated, multi-million-dollar detox industry.
Oh, the detox industry.
Yeah.
We need to spend some serious time here because this is where the internet really preys on that panic cheat code mentality.
It's the Wild West out there.
It really is. We're talking about the masking agents, the special herbal teas, the guaranteed flush pills that cost like $50 a bottle.
At least $50.
Let's tear into the medically accurate reality of these claims. How do these products actually interact with the drug screening logic?
What's deeply fascinating and somewhat disturbing is how these detox claims operate on a fundamental misrepresentation of human biology.
We just lie.
Basically. Because your body already possesses a highly advanced, incredibly efficient, and continuous detoxification system.
The liver and kidneys.
It consists of your liver and your kidneys. You cannot miraculously speed up the metabolic half-life of a chemical compound inside your liver by drinking a $20 bottle of proprietary herbal tea.
Right, you can't put the liver on fast forward.
The rate at which your specific liver enzymes break down a drug is generally fixed. It's dictated by your genetics, your age, and your overall organ health.
Okay, so if you can't speed up the liver, what are these masking agents and detox drinks actually doing? Are they just expensive placebos, or is there a mechanical trick they're trying to pull off?
Most of them are trying to pull off a very crude mechanical trick. Extreme dilution.
Just watering it down?
Exactly. They instruct the user to drink massive, sometimes uncomfortable amounts of water along with their product. The biological goal of these drinks isn't actually to remove or metabolize the drug from your body faster.
Because they can't.
Right. The goal is simply to dilute your urine to such an extreme degree that the concentration of the drug metabolite falls below the testing machine's specific cutoff threshold.
Oh, I see.
They are trying to water down the exhaust fumes so much that the sensor just can't detect them anymore.
But if we go back to the logic of the test, the laboratories are fully aware that dilution is the oldest trick in the book.
Of course they are.
The algorithms and the testing procedures must account for someone just flushing their system with a gallon of water, right? It's like the game developers installing anti-cheat software.
They absolutely do, and this is exactly where the rigid logic of the screen catches people. When a modern clinical or forensic lab tests a sample, they don't just look for the presence of drug metabolites.
What else are they looking for?
They run validity checks.
Validity checks.
Yeah. They look at the specific gravity, which is essentially a measurement of how concentrated or watery the urine is, and they measure the levels of creatinine.
Creatinine. Okay, what is that?
Creatinine is a natural waste product generated by normal muscle wear and tear, and it is excreted by the kidneys at a relatively constant, predictable rate.
So it's always supposed to be there at a certain level.
Exactly. If you drink a gallon of water in 2 hours, your specific gravity drops to new water levels, and your creatinine concentration plummets.
The machine sees that right away.
The lab equipment flags this anomaly immediately. The result doesn't say you passed, it says the sample is diluted or invalid.
Wow.
And in many clinical, legal, and employment settings, an invalid or diluted result is treated with the exact same administrative consequence as a positive result.
You fail anyway.
You fail anyway.
And this is where the arms race between the detox companies and the laboratories happen.
Yes, it's totally an arms race.
Because you read the labels on some of these detox drinks, and they boast that they include creatine supplements or heavy doses of B vitamins.
Right, trying to cover their tracks.
Exactly. They are actively trying to trick those specific validity checks.
Mm-hmm.
They add B vitamins to artificially turn the diluted water yellow again, so it looks normal.
Yep.
And they add creatine, hoping it metabolizes into creatinine to artificially spike the levels back to normal. They are literally trying to hack the anti-cheat software.
It is a constant arms race, but it is one where the biology lab almost always has the upper hand.
Because the lab updates its software.
Right. The screening logic is constantly updated to detect those exact adulterants and artificial spikes. But if we pull back and connect this to the bigger picture established by iMedix, the most critical issue here isn't whether someone beats a test. The critical issue is the practical safety implications of attempting these hacks. The danger is the severe lack of medical literacy that leads a human being to ingest extreme amounts of substances in a panic.
Let's make that real for the listener.
Yeah.
What are the actual physical risks of trying to trick the biology? Because I think people assume the worst-case scenario is just losing their job, but you're saying the worst-case scenario is actually a medical emergency.
Completely, a real medical emergency. Let's look at the dilution method. People think water is harmless, so they drink massive quantities in a very short period.
Just chugging gallons.
This can lead to a condition called hyponatremia.
Which is what?
It's commonly known as water intoxication. When you flood your body with water faster than your kidneys can process it, you dangerously dilute the sodium levels in your blood.
And sodium is important.
Sodium is an electrolyte crucial for cellular function. When sodium drops too low, water actually moves into your cells to balance the concentration, causing the cells to swell. And if the cells in your brain swell, you can experience seizures, fall into a coma, and people have literally died from water intoxication while trying to flush their system for a drug test.
So by trying to hack the system, they're basically crashing their own internal server.
That is exactly what they're doing.
They are overriding a fundamental biological balance just to change a measurement in a plastic cup.
And that's just water. Consider the people who read on an internet forum that niacin vitamin B3 burns fat and will quickly flush out lipid-soluble drugs like cannabinoids.
Oh, I've heard of the niacin trick.
It's very common. They go to a pharmacy and take massive, wildly toxic doses of niacin.
Thinking more is better.
Right. And they end up in the emergency room with severe liver toxicity, intense gastrointestinal distress, and terrifying allergic-style reactions where their skin literally burns and turns bright red.
The niacin flush.
Yes. They poison themselves with vitamins because they fundamentally misunderstand how metabolism works.
I have to pause here because this paints a pretty grim picture.
It is grim.
I mean, we have people drinking themselves into comas with water, destroying their livers with niacin, and spending hundreds of dollars on useless sugar water, all because they don't understand the science.
Yeah.
But I have to challenge the medical establishment's role in creating this mess.
Please do.
Is it possible that the medical community is simply terrible at explaining why these risks exist?
Oh, absolutely.
If a doctor just hands a patient a pamphlet that says, don't do drugs, you'll fail your test, without ever explaining lipid solubility, half-lives, or the dangers of hyponatremia, hasn't the medical community failed that patient?
In many ways, yes.
Right. If patients are constantly left in the dark about the why, aren't they naturally going to turn to the internet forums that at least pretend to offer an explanation?
That is a very valid critique of the traditional healthcare model. Historically, the medical community and certainly the regulatory frameworks around employment and sports have relied heavily on authoritative directives.
Just do what I say.
Do this, don't do that, here's the rule. They have relied on compliance rather than empowering education.
Because education takes time.
And in a clinical setting, time constraints are a massive issue. A primary care physician often doesn't have 45 minutes to sit down and explain the complex pharmacokinetics of how a specific prescription interacts with liver enzymes.
Right, they have 15 minutes per patient.
Exactly. So the patient walks out, feels anxious about an upcoming screen or a potential drug interaction, and they go straight to their phone.
And Google is right there.
And on the internet, someone will gladly give them a seemingly logical but completely false scientific explanation about how drinking bleach or consuming activated charcoal will solve their problem.
It sounds scientific to them.
Nature abhors a vacuum, and in the absence of accessible clinical education, misinformation floods in to fill the void.
And this dynamic brings us right to the antidote, the cure for this panic-driven, misinformation-fueled cycle. According to the framework established by the iMedix source material, the antidote isn't stricter testing or more aggressive rules. The antidote is patient education and clinical clarity.
Education is really the only sustainable intervention. The iMedix platform provides this education to directly counter these misunderstandings at their root.
Giving people the why.
Exactly. It clarifies not just what the rules are, but who may be affected by these issues and, crucially, why. Educational resources act as the antidote to the panic-driven how-to-pass searches because they replace fear, anxiety, and desperation with a grounded scientific understanding of toxicology and screening logic.
But, and let me play devil's advocate for a second, how does reading an article on a medical platform actually translate to a change in real-world behavior?
That's the million-dollar question.
Because it's one thing to read a well-written breakdown of liver enzymes. It's another thing entirely to actually change how you treat your body when your livelihood is on the line. How does knowledge actually defeat panic?
It changes behavior by shifting the locus of control.
Locus of control. Explain that.
When you believe a drug test is just an arbitrary hurdle put in place by an adversary, like a boss or a lab, you naturally look for a cheat code to jump over it. You view your body as a machine to be hacked,
Right.
a vehicle you can manipulate without consequence. But when an independent platform like iMedix clearly explains the science, when you learn that a drug's half-life dictates how long it stays active,
Okay.
when you understand that your kidneys have a strict maximum fluid processing limit, when you realize that metabolic rates vary wildly based on your personal genetics, the illusion breaks.
The cheat code doesn't work.
You stop trying to manipulate the test because you realize you cannot outsmart the biological logic. You start understanding your own body's metabolic processes instead of fighting them.
You transition from a mindset of evasion and manipulation to a mindset of biological respect.
Biological respect is a great way to phrase it. You realize that the rules aren't written by a testing company or an HR department.
The rules are written by human physiology.
The immutable rules are written by human physiology. And you cannot cheat human physiology without causing collateral damage to your own organs.
Wow.
When patients truly understand this, the behavioral shift is profound. They make informed decisions about their health, their medications, and their treatments.
They stop guessing.
They understand why mixing a prescribed central nervous system depressant with an over-the-counter herbal supplement might be dangerous because they now understand how the liver handles competing substances. They stop looking for quick fixes and start engaging in long-term health literacy.
And this is exactly why this deep dive matters to you, the listener, right now. Even if you were never subjected to a drug screen in your entire life.
Which many people aren't.
Right. Even if you never have to navigate the anxiety of peeing in a cup for a job or giving a hair sample or taking a blood test for a medical procedure,
Yeah.
understanding that your body operates on chemical logic rather than willpower or internet tricks is a foundational concept.
Absolutely.
It is the absolute bedrock of owning your personal health literacy. Because the logic of the drug screen applies to everything you consume.
Everything.
When you understand that you can't flush a specific chemical out of your lipid cells with cranberry juice, You also start to understand why you need to take your prescribed antibiotics for the full 10 days to maintain active blood levels.
Yes.
You understand why taking Tylenol after a night of heavy drinking is a terrible idea for your liver enzymes.
Yeah.
The logic of the drug screen is just the logic of your own biology reflecting back at you in a laboratory setting.
And providing that clear, undistorted reflection is exactly what independent platforms like iMedix are trying to achieve.
Taking away the distorted funhouse mirror of the internet forums.
Exactly. By prioritizing objective, scientifically backed educational information over commerce and panic, they are actively dismantling that cheat code mentality.
Are changing the game.
They are replacing the anxiety of evasion with the empowerment of understanding. Because when you know how your body actually works, when you understand the logic of your own system, you don't need a cheat code. You have the ultimate user manual.
Which brings us to the end of today's journey. We started with a very specific, almost transactional, highly panicked question: how to pass a drug test.
A question millions of people ask every day.
And we used the iMedix Guide to Toxicology and Drug Screening Logic to unpack the massive assumptions, fears, and biological misunderstandings hiding behind those 5 little words.
We covered a lot of ground.
We did. We explored the illusion of consensus on the internet and why independent medical platforms are so vital. We broke down the rigid logic of toxicology.
Looking at the different testing inputs.
Right, how urine, saliva, blood, and hair tests aren't moral judgments, but different biological lenses viewing completely different metabolic timelines.
The rearview mirror versus the real-time snapshot.
We dissected the multi-million-dollar detox industry, exposing why the concept of flushing your system is mostly a myth based on a dangerous misunderstanding of water versus lipid solubility.
The sponge analogy.
Sponge. And how attempting to hack the test can lead to severe medical emergencies like water intoxication or niacin poisoning.
Which is the real danger here.
And most importantly, we saw how replacing the desire for a quick fix with actual medical literacy shifts our entire perspective on personal health.
It serves as a powerful reminder that platforms prioritizing objective educational information aren't just there to answer academic trivia questions.
No, they have a real-world impact.
They are there to protect people from the very real physical dangers of misinformation. They provide the clinical clarity necessary to navigate a modern world that is constantly overwhelmingly eager to sell you a quick fix that just doesn't exist.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final lingering question to ponder long after you take your headphones off.
What's the thought?
If our first instinct, when faced with a medical screen, is to jump online and search for a way to beat or pass it, what does that say about our relationship with our own biology?
That's a profound question.
Are you treating your body as an adversary you constantly need to outsmart, rather than a beautifully complex system you simply need to understand? Up, up, down, down, left, right, left, right. The cheat code doesn't exist. It's time to learn the rules of the game.